Hello! Today we're going to be talking about Marry My Husband, the messiness of its characters, and handing out some super special awards. I have lots of thoughts on the drama, so get comfy, grab a drink, and let's just talk about it. Marry My Husband is an entertaining and endearing show about revenge and second chances filled with unexpected twists, very dramatic plot lines, kind of like complex villains, and also a super cute romance. So, if any of that sounds appealing to you, then this is definitely the show for you. I initially started watching this because a friend recommended it to me, and honestly, I love mess, which is why I watch Love is Blind every year, as well as The Ultimatum. That was kind of for me the selling point and why I wanted to watch this drama. So let's get into the characters. Our main lead is Ji-Won, who is played by Park Min-Hwan. To date, Healer is still my favorite role of hers, even though it came out about 10 years ago. So seeing that she was going to be the lead in this drama, I was a little bit excited because I haven't been a huge fan of her past projects over the past couple of years. In 2023, we meet Ji-Won in the hospital and learn that she has stomach cancer. So she decides to go home one day and she finds her best friend and her husband in bed together. And if that wasn't bad enough, they are flirting, kissing, and talking about how much they can't wait for her to die so that they can collect the insurance money. So Ji-Won isn't as quiet as she would like to be, which I mean honestly makes sense because she's in quite a bit of shock. And as a result, her husband and her best friend hear a sound and notice that she's in the apartment. So they follow her, they get into an argument, and ultimately she's pushed into a glass coffee table by her husband and then she dies. Or so we think. What happens is that Ji-Won wakes up in 2013, 10 years before the events that just happened, and also before she marries her husband. So this time, Ji-Won has the opportunity to ultimately change her fate and get a second chance at life. An important thing to note is that everything that happened in 2023 is destined to happen again. So this includes falling into the glass table, the cheating, as well as ultimately the death. But the twist on that is that it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen to Ji-Won. So to ensure that this doesn't happen to her and to make sure that someone else gets her fate, she hatches a plan for her best friend to end up marrying her husband. Hence the title of the drama, Marry My Husband. Ji-Won as a character is extremely relatable, which is why I think I like her so much. So as a kid, she witnessed the affair of her mom and then ultimately just grew up with her dad, who gave her the love of not just one, but two parents. And then in high school, she was bullied. And with all these different circumstances, she managed to find the positive light in any situation, which is honestly not very easy to do. And I think as a result of kind of that positivity that she kind of spreads into the air, she ultimately attracted the wrong kind of people who kind of wanted to stomp on all of that positivity. But hey, she has a second chance at life, so she has the opportunity to kind of change all of this and make sure she doesn't die. Another thing I really loved about the characterization of Ji-Won is that even though she's starting to become more confident, that old version of herself, the 2023 version, is still inside. And it kind of peeks out in moments when she's anxious or shy about making decisions. So I really appreciate that they didn't go the full mile of like having her go from like kind of like shy and nervous to becoming 100% confident. That it's like that really like that balance of the new version of herself and the old version of herself, which makes her even more relatable. And it's kind of like those little things that really just add nuance to her character. So one gripe I have is the makeover aspect, which is also just because I really don't like the makeover aspects in dramas at all. A lot of the times I feel like it's a little bit unnecessary. So in this case, honestly, as soon as she appeared on the screen, I knew they were gonna do it. Like it was so obvious. Like they weren't gonna have Park Min-Young look like that through the entirety of the drama. So in terms of her makeover, she gets a dramatic haircut, which I thought she honestly looked amazing. Then she also gets new clothes, and she gets contacts. I will say that this makeover honestly didn't bug me as much as other dramas. I'm talking to you, she was pretty, because they really tried to convince us in that drama that she was unattractive for having curly hair, which is kind of ridiculous. Post makeover, however, I was obsessed with literally every outfit she wore. I know there was some discourse online about whether or not it was work appropriate, but honestly, I really don't care. She looked amazing. She rocked every outfit, and I want all of them for my closet. Speaking of other people who get makeovers, our male lead is Ji-Hyuk, who is the heir of UNK, which is the company that literally every person in this show works at. Like, they're all coworkers. So he is played by Nanu. So the first thing I ever saw him in was Mr. Queen, and I honestly had second lead syndrome the entire time. So I'm super excited to have been able to see him in something again. In the original timeline, he was Chi-Won's boss when she worked at UNK. And in 2023, when she dies, he attends a funeral, which is how he learns about the bullying that she had endured, as well as how she died. On the way home, he ended up in a car accident and died. Or so we think. When he wakes up, he's in the back of a taxi, and the driver happens to be Chi-Won's dad, who offers him the possibility of having a second chance at life. Ji-Hyuk says yes, and when he wakes up, he's in 2013 with all of the knowledge about everything that happened in 2023, just like Chi-Won. Before dying, he lived a pretty unhappy life. So as a kid, his dad cheated on his mom. I'm gonna say this now. There's a lot of cheating in the show. Like, I know that the main characters had cheating plot lines, but I was not prepared for both of our main leads having cheating storylines like within their family. It's really a lot. So back to Ji-Hyuk, however, eventually his parents died, and he was raised by his grandfather along with his sister. So growing up as essentially the heir of UNK, he never really had the opportunity to kind of decide what he wanted in life. His life was basically predetermined according to his grandfather's wishes. 2013, Ji-Hyuk does get the opportunity to kind of reflect on the life decisions, or let's say the lack of decisions, that he made leading up to his life and ultimately his death in 2023. And I appreciated that they kind of gave us that little bit of a glimpse into him. But some of those decisions ultimately did come as a result of Chi-Won, which we'll talk about when we talk about their relationships. But I will say, if I had one criticism of Ji-Hyuk, is that he's a little too perfect. Like, he's rich, he's handsome, he's tall, he's the heir of UNK. But I really wanted a little bit more depth when it came to his characters, especially considering that the rest of the cast just has so much complexity to them that he felt a little bit flat for me. And similar to Chi-Won, his character also gets a makeover, which is in the form of contacts and better fitting suits. Honestly, I wasn't as upset about it because the suits he was wearing in the first two episodes were not doing him any favors, and they were so freaking baggy. I love the relationship between Chi-Won and Ji-Hyuk throughout the entire drama. So initially, we only knew that Chi-Won had died in 2023 and then woken up in 2013. Anything relating to Ji-Hyuk was initially a mystery, but we ended up finding out that he also came from the future through a conversation about, wait for it, BTS. So let me set the scene for you. So Chi-Won is on the rooftop listening to BTS's first album, and then Ji-Hyuk comes up to her and they're having a conversation about BTS. And then when they started talking about some of their favorite songs, he mentions a song from the present day. And then she also mentions another song that doesn't exist yet. And the song of her choice is Spring Day. So then they both look at each other and are like, oh, wait, how do you know that? Because this song doesn't exist yet. And then boom, they realize that both of them actually came from 2023 and they've both woken up in 2013. I thought this was a pretty like cool and interesting way to kind of not only bring BTS into the show, but also kind of something that's different in terms of how the two leads were able to kind of have this realization moment. But also, like, imagine knowing all the BTS songs that are available now and then being stuck with just like one album and it's like the first one. Honestly, that's so tragic. Luckily for us, this happened way earlier in the show, so we had the opportunity to kind of like move past that and watch them support each other as friends, co-workers, and eventually lovers. In true K-drama fashion, Ji-Won and Ji-Hyuk actually met as college students. So one night, Ji-Won gets drunk and she runs into a sober Ji-Hyuk, like physically runs into him. And Ji-Hyuk is initially like confused, and then he overhears a group of guys making comments about potentially taking advantage of her. So rather than letting that happen, he decides to accompany for the night. So they get food and then they end up laying on like a lawn or a park overnight. And during that time, they kind of talk about some of their deepest, darkest secrets and basically just sharing some information about themselves. So Ji-Won, in what I would consider to be probably one of my favorite scenes from the drama, talks about the fact that she feels like she's a boat and that she's constantly moving because of everything that's happened in her life. And all she wants is to be able to find land so that she can feel safe and actually stand up for the first time in her life. So in the morning, Ji-Won wakes up, realizes she's next to some random guy and just like speeds off and runs and just like doesn't want to have anything to do with the situation. And when Ji-Hyuk wakes up, he realizes that she's gone. So either the next day or a couple of days later, Ji-Hyuk is walking through the campus and then he hears Chaewon's voice and she's talking to a cat that she had just like found. So this starts a montage of Ji-Hyuk kind of like staring at Chaewon from afar. Like, I know it's meant to be like super romantic, but it was honestly kind of a little creepy. So he's essentially like staring at her and watching her take care of this cat that's been abandoned. So regularly she'll come by and make sure that it's like clothed. Also just give it like food and some water. And then eventually Ji-Hyuk also just takes an interest in this cat just because it's also important to Chaewon. So one day as winter approaches, he builds a shelter for this cat that he has literally no connection with. And then when Chaewon comes over the same day, she's just like amazed and shocked because she didn't know that anyone else was paying attention to this cat as well. Then we get a couple of weeks later. There's an incident where there is a cat in the road and it happens to be the same cat that Ji-Won and Ji-Hyuk have been taking care of. So without even thinking, Ji-Hyuk runs and he like dives in front of the car and eventually also just gets injured, but he really wants to make sure that the cat is okay just because he knows how important it is to Ji-Won, but also he started to have like a bond with the cat as well. And then when we get to 2013, as well as 2023, this man has the same cat from when they were in college, and it's so adorable to see that he's like bonded with this cat over the years and that it's become something that's important to him as well. So another scene I really enjoyed is when Chae-won comes to Ji-Hyuk's apartment for the first time, she makes a remark about that the cat reminds her of the one that she had seen in college. And then several episodes down the line, when Ji-Hyuk finally confesses that he already knew her, he also says that, oh, it happened to be the same cat. And just like the excitement on her face was just like so adorable to watch. So it was really nice seeing them have this connection from when they were college students, but then also continuing that through the story. I also love the respect aspect of their relationship. So I was initially super worried that Ji-Hyuk would be the one kind of driving the revenge and ultimately like taking over for her, just because he has like more money, he has more connections, and it would be a lot easier for him to kind of just like stomp on some of these villains, especially when they all work at the same company and he's gonna be the heir. But instead, the story kind of like focused on Chae-won and kind of like what she wanted to do, her actions, like her motivations, and ultimately how she wanted to handle the situation. And rather than Ji-Hyuk kind of like driving the entire revenge, he only supported and respected like her decisions. So if she didn't want him to help, he was not gonna help, and he was gonna respect that and kind of look at the situation from afar. Ji-won also starts off being afraid to kind of reach out for help from Ji-Hyuk, just because she's really worried about being more like Soo Min and kind of taking advantage of people rather than it being seen as help. And ultimately by the end of the show, she's able to actually like share her worries with Ji-Hyuk and actually be able to depend on him for situations. And on the relationship front, even though Ji-Hyuk expressed interest in wanting to be with Chae-won earlier on in the show, it was really nice to see the way he kind of respected and also patiently waited for her to be ready, and after having dealt with like her boyfriend as well as her best friend before they could be together. One of my favorite moments I'm so excited to talk about right now is when Chae-won asks Ji-Hyuk what he wants in life, which is something that no one has ever asked him. He says, and I quote, "I want to be land." And she has absolutely no idea what that means. But we as an audience already know that Chae-won has said that all she wants in life is to be land. And for him to say that the only thing he wants in life is basically to be her land, to be a safe haven for her, is just so adorable. And I don't know, it was just something about like the delivery as well that kind of like pushes the romance even further for me. I don't know. It's just like the cute thing that I really appreciate, and it comes up in the drama a couple of times as well. Ultimately, Chae-won finds a worthy partner and someone for her to be able to trust and depend on, while Ji-Hyuk, on the other hand, learns that it's okay to want things in life and also to kind of be normal, like whether it's like crying or like wanting hugs or kind of like being anxious or wanting someone to take care of him. These are all the little things that he's able to freely do when he is with Chae-won, because when he's with Chae-won, he's not Ji-Hyuk, the heir of UNK. He's just Ji-Hyuk, the person, and the person who is loved by Chae-won. I saw some comments floating around Drama Beans as well as Reddit talking about the moral implication of Ji-Hyuk and Chae-won's actions as it relates to the two main villains, and kind of disagreeing with how they handled the situation. And to that, I want to say, I disagree. I think they were perfectly valid in the way they handled the situation. Because in 2023, Chae-won witnesses her best friend and her husband having an affair in their bed, by the way. And then she ends up being murdered by her husband and betrayed by the two people she trusted the most in the world. There are so many moments throughout the drama where we see Chae-won and Ji-Hyuk questioning whether or not what they're doing is right and if there's another approach that they can do. But ultimately, the show talks about second chances, and with second chances, you have to live in the moment and choose yourself. Because if Chae-won doesn't choose herself and doesn't make any changes to her life, she's doomed to repeat her life and end up in the same situation where she has a terrible relationship with her husband. Her best friend is gonna cheat with her husband. And then again in 2023, she's gonna have made all the same decisions and then she's just gonna be murdered again. And to me, honestly, that doesn't make sense. The show has already defined the rules of fate, and that in order for Ji-Won to escape her situation, the fate has to be passed on to someone else. And considering the villainous trickery that is conducted by the villains, I would say that what happened to them was honestly more than fair. Ji-Won never forced her perpetrators to cheat. I mean, did she create situations where it was entirely possible and they had to spend more time together where it could have happened? Yes, but she never told them to cheat. That was ultimately their decision. So it doesn't make sense to really question their handling of the situation. And talking about cheaters, let's get to the first half of Team Evil, and that is Soo Min. Soo Min is played by Song Ha-Yoon. I thought this was my first time seeing her in anything, but then I saw several people mentioning Fight My Way, and then I saw that she had also starred in that. Complete night and day. Like, the characters are not similar whatsoever. She is amazing in this. I think that's honestly one of the reasons I kept watching this every single week. It was just something about like her commitment to the character was so good, to the point where I like literally physically felt uncomfortable whenever Soo Min was on the screen, just because of how good the acting was. Like, there are these little acting things that she does, like the emotive eyes, the micro expressions, as well as like these little like lip quivers, which just take the acting to a completely other level. Like, I don't know whoever her agent is, but she honestly should just only be booked for roles like this, because she was absolutely like amazing in this drama. Soo Min is a real piece of work. Some words I would use to describe her are liar, cheater, manipulator, and selfish. She will stop at nothing to get what she wants, regardless of who she has to step on. The catalyst for Soo Min's behavior, as well as her friendship with Chaewon, starts with their parents. So I've already mentioned that Chaewon's mom had an affair, and the person she had an affair with was Soo Min's dad, because they all lived in the same place. Did I mention that there's a lot of affairs going on in the show? So the differences between how Chaewon and Soo Min handle this revelation says a lot about who they are as characters, and also just how they handle situations that are going to come up in life. Soo Min finds out about the affair through her mom, and one day she decides to set out to find her dad. So as she sees her dad from across, she picks up her phone, she calls him, and she sees him look at the phone and make a remark that it's an unimportant call, that it's irrelevant, and essentially he just walks away with Chaewon's mom. After that, Soo Min knowingly approaches Chaewon. Wait, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Soo Min steals Chaewon's wallet on the bus and then gets off the bus, follows her to a store where she can't pay for something because she doesn't have her purse, and then hands it back to her to pretend as if she's a good person and that she did such a good deed, just for them to have their first meeting. And the purpose of Soo Min wanting to meet Chaewon is she wanted to see how Chaewon could live a life not knowing about the affair. So when she sees that Chaewon is not only happy, but has a supportive dad, she just feels this immense jealousy. And that's the day that she decides that she's gonna wreck Chaewon's life. And honestly, she doesn't really have a care in the world. I do wish we would have been able to see more interactions of Soo Min with her mom in the past as well as present day, because I do feel like that's a huge piece of her characterization, because the mom was the one who originally told Soo Min about the affair, as opposed to Chae-won, who found out by following her dad, who is following her mom. And in the present day, the only thing we learn is that her mom might still be alive, and they just don't really have that much of a relationship. And I do wish the show would have explored that a little bit more, because we don't even get any cameos from the mom. All we do hear is that there's this one conversation about, oh, the fact that like her mom's around, and honestly, that's pretty much it. While Ji-Won is initially upset about discovering the affair of her mom, honestly, she kind of like ultimately moves on with her life, and with a dad who is like completely supportive to her, it honestly doesn't really feel like she's missing that much of a parent. And kudos to her for being able to kind of like move past that and not necessarily blame herself or blame her dad for that situation. And it's not surprising that Soo Min's approach to life is playing the victim card, abstaining from fault, and making sure that no one, absolutely no one, is going to be happier than her. We're shown countless times throughout the show that Soo Min's manipulation as well as her selfishness really have no ends, honestly. She's willing to kind of like stomp on anyone, even if it's her quote unquote best friend. At one point in the show, Soo Min flirts with the misogynistic manager to essentially kind of steal a proposal that Chae-won has been working on really hard, especially since it was rejected in the original timeline. And Soo Min swoops in, steals the idea, has her name put on it, and essentially Chae-won is kind of iced out from being a part of the team when the idea initially launches. We're also shown moments where Soo Min had knowingly embarrassed Chae-won, and this includes tripping her in the workplace cafeteria so that food is spilled on top of her, not telling her about the high school class reunion so that she shows up underdressed. And I would say the most egregious one is, as part of that high school anniversary, Soo Min had gifted Chae-won a pair of earrings from a brand called, I think it's Authentique. And while they apparently like looked real, Ji-Hyuk was able to quickly spot that it's a dupe, and Soo Min had knowingly gave her a dupe of the product so that when she showed up at the class reunion, the bullies would be making fun of her for, one, having earrings similar to Soo Min, but two, the audacity of her to wear a knockoff of a luxury brand. So I really appreciated Chae-won kind of having all the knowledge from the original timeline and being able to kind of subvert and ruin Soo Min's plans at each one of these events. And every time Chae-won pushes back on Soo Min, we start to see parts of like her fake smile facade just like crack a little bit. So there's a scene where Soo Min declares that she cannot live life without Chae-won, and then she proceeds to jump into a lake and yells that if Chae-won doesn't save her, she's gonna die. And Chae-won, being the good person that she is, she jumps into the lake, and as soon as she's in the lake, Soo Min grabs her and pushes her deeper into the water, basically trying to end her life. I really hope I never meet anyone like Soo Min in my life. Because for Chae-won, as long as Soo Min is around, she's not allowed to kind of like have anything or want anything for herself because of the fact that Soo Min's gonna take it away. She stole her wallet as a kid. She's tried to steal her proposal from work, and then next, she's gonna steal her man. Speaking of Chae-won's man, and another person I hope I never meet in life is Min Hwan, who is played by Yi-Kyung, who is in a bunch of dramas that I really like Welcome to Waikiki, Children of Nobody, and Partners for Justice, which I'm still waiting on a season 3 of. In terms of acting, I was kind of upset when I found out that he would be playing the villain, and that's just because I honestly just tend to like him in everything that he's in, but ultimately it made sense for him to kind of play this villainous role because he also served as a comedic relief, which he's done in a bunch of dramas. We eventually find out that Min-Hwan and Chae-won have been dating for about 7 years. And I will say that even though he is ultimately portrayed as one of the villains, there are definitely some sweet moments depicted throughout the drama of a seemingly like perfect relationship, at least when they initially started dating, like the scenes where they went on a picnic together. But I feel like the more we learned about Min-Hwan, that's kind of when we learned about how dangerous and also deceptive he is as a person. And it was really heartbreaking to see the 2013 Chae-won have to kind of like even interact with Min-Hwan, considering that they're still dating, because he was physically as well as verbally abusive to her. And in the back of her mind, she knows that like he's like this now, and ultimately he's gonna be the person that kind of like ends her life. I saw this really great post on Tumblr talking about the differences between Soo Min, Min Hwan, and Yura, another villain we'll get to. And I'll see if I can find the post and actually put it in the video. But essentially, it said that in life, we don't necessarily expect to run into like chaebols or manipulative people kind of like Soo Min. But Min Hwan is definitely a person that we could meet in life. He masquerades as this like goofy, nice guy who like loves and adores his girlfriend on the outside. But in the moments that we kind of get to see who he really is, he's very like manipulative and he's also deceitful. And it's downright scary how quickly he's kind of able to flip that switch and become that person who will like physically abuse his girlfriend. The fact that Min-Hwan sleeps with his girlfriend's best friend when they all work at the same company on the same team is just truly unhinged. And then they show up to work the next day as if nothing has happened, at least to Min-Hwan, that is. To him, Chae-won is the prize, the person he wants to marry, as opposed to Soo Min, who he regards as someone who's just like a good time and essentially basically just a side piece, and he doesn't believe that she's even marriage material. But, you know, does that stop him from sleeping with Soo Min more than one time? No. After Min-Hwa proposes to Chae-won, but before I continue, I have to say, the proposal in the original timeline has to be one of the saddest and worst proposals like I've ever seen. First of all, he proposes to her on her birthday, which is like an automatic red flag. Then he blows up some like cheap balloons, puts candles in a sandwich, and then he spells like, will you marry me? And if that's not even bad enough, he spelled the word marry incorrectly. Like, can we get rid of this guy? Like, he's just trash all around. So back to 2013, to ensure that Chae-won gets kind of like the proposal of her dreams, specifically in this do-over, Ji-Hyuk actually works with Min-Hwan to create like her ideal proposal, and he uses drone technology using all of his future knowledge, and he creates like this beautiful light show. He spells out her favorite BTS song, Spring Day, and then at the end it says, will you marry me, with the drones in the sky. Honestly, amazing. Well done. It's honestly just like night and day comparing both of those different proposals. So at the end of that night, after he has proposed, Min-Hwan goes into their room before Chae-won, and guess who's in his bed? It's Soo Min. And he doesn't even like really kick her out or anything. They just end up hooking up again. Like, come on. Like, you just literally proposed to Chae-won, who is probably like a couple feet away, and you're still messing around. It just doesn't make sense at all. Eventually, Everyone at work finds out about the affair. Yes, this is the moment we have been waiting for. So they find out because it was like publicly or anonymously announced on their work like online blog, and people were able to like kind of like quickly figure it out who it was. And it leads to this moment of Chae-won like dramatically slapping Min-Hwan in front of everyone at the office, and it's just extremely awkward for Min-Hwan and Soo Min for like the days after. Eventually, Soo Min is let go from the company, not necessarily because of the affair, but because, as I stated earlier, Min-Hwan and Soo Min have been hooking up everywhere and anywhere they can. And that includes the fact that they hooked up at an adjacent worksite. And because they were hooking up and not doing their jobs, their negligence led to a customer ending up in the hospital. And if it wasn't worse, they also covered it up, and eventually that came to light. And seeing that she's about to lose everything, Soo Min goes and tells Min-Hwan that she's pregnant, and honestly, like, come on, like, of course she's lying. And she even like makes it believable by buying an ultrasound online just so he has no reason to kind of like even disprove what she's saying. And Min-Hwan agrees to marry her. So at the wedding, Chae-won shows up dressed to the nines, looking amazing in an all-white ensemble. And while Soo Min thinks that she's kind of has the upper hand and is bragging about the fact that she went shopping with the mother-in-law and stuff, Chae-won just like looks her in the eye and says, "Congratulations on picking up my trash." And Soo Min is just confused because she doesn't even realize that she essentially has fallen into Chae-won's plan. Post-wedding, Min-Hwan's debt problems come back to bite him in the ass, and as a result, Min-Hwan and Soo Min are forced to move in with his parents. With the introduction of the last act villain, Min-Hwan again has an affair with someone else. Like, I don't even know what I can even say about this man. Aside from that, he's just like he's just trash. Like, who does this so many times? Like, I don't even know what else to like say about him. But because he does this, Chae-won's original fate is slowly starting to come to form. And with his desire to be completely free of Soo Min so he can be with his new lover, live his life, or whatever he wants to do, he comes up with a plan to get rid of her and do what? Say it with me, get the insurance money. After kidnapping Soo Min and taking her to a remote home in the woods, Min-Hwan originally wanted to get rid of her and make it look like an accident in order to claim the insurance money. But Soo Min was able to free herself and a fight ensued. I will say, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time wondering who's gonna win. Is anyone gonna even die? And during this entire time, I didn't think about the fact that there could potentially be a subversion of Chae-won's original fate. And I will say that the show happened to impress me when it came to that front. The entire time I've been watching the drama, I was thinking that honestly, like, it would be a woman who follows Chae-won's fate, partially because I feel like that's what the show kept telling me over and over and over again. So I wasn't prepared at all for what would happen next, and I was completely shocked. Ultimately, Min-Hwan is the one who ends up getting pushed into the coffee table by Soo Min. And I felt like that's such a poetic way to go out, because in the original timeline, he did the same thing to Chae-won. So for him to succumb to her fate, honestly, chef's kiss. It was brilliant. And I love that the show kind of like took that original fate and kind of did a nice little twist on it. After evading authorities, Soo Min decides to go after Chae-won because she feels like Chae-won is responsible for whatever reason for all the events that have occurred leading to this moment in her life. Honestly, I don't know why she even like thinks that at all. Like, she really thinks about Chae-won a lot. So Soo Min essentially falls right into their plan. Chaewon and Ji Hyuk had worked with the police. They've set up cameras in Chaewon's apartment for whenever this pivotal moment was actually going to happen. So when Soo Min breaks into the apartment and she kind of restrains Chaewon is able to kind of like quickly unrestrain herself using self-defensive tactics that Ji Hyuk had taught her. And I really appreciated that we kind of saw some of those self-defensive tactics at the beginning of the drama. And it was cool to kind of have it sprinkled in throughout the show and then have it like kind of like pay off as that pivotal moment of Ji Hyuk being able to kind of like defend herself as well. Really appreciated that. And as Soo Min is kind of taken away in handcuffs by the police, she's still insisting that Chaewon is responsible, like literally delusional, thinking that Chaewon did anything at all to put her in the situation that she's in. As I wrap up about Soo Min, the final thing I will say is that Soo Min having to spend the rest of her life in prison with visions of Min Hwan being alive as well as Chaewon having a happy life, I feel like honestly that's kind of like a perfect fitting to her storyline. So physically she's trapped in prison, but she also has this prison in her mind that she's never ever going to be able to escape. And honestly, I think that's a perfect way to go. To the writers who want to introduce a villain 2/3 of the way into a story when villains already exist, just to shake it up, just stop. We really don't need this anymore. Yura is a chaebol who was arranged to be Ji Hyuk's wife as a matching through both of their families as a way to also benefit both of their businesses. They had no physical attraction to each other, no romantic feelings to each other. Honestly, they just didn't really seem like they liked each other that much at all. But it wasn't until Ji Hyuk changes his clothes, essentially gets that makeover that we talked about in the beginning. And it isn't until he states that there's another woman that he's interested in pursuing where Yura decides, oh, no, now I want him. Now he's going to be my man. And that's when she ultimately starts becoming a villain as part of the show. And she goes through great lengths just to make sure that if Ji Hyuk wants someone, that person needs to go in order to make sure that she's the one who ends up with him in the end. Another point I want to make here is that Yura realizes for the first time in her life that she's about to lose something, and she's always kind of like the winner in these kinds of scenarios. The show also kind of hints at her like violent nature through her constant like boxing interactions. Like most of the time when we see her, she's kind of in a boxing ring, like beating people up. And then there's also one point in the show where we have a scene where there's like a physical folder, and I believe it's like women who she's assaulted, and it's specifically I think women who were interested in Ji Hyuk. To Yura, all of this is honestly essentially a game. Ji Hyuk is her prize. She believes that she deserves him and he doesn't belong to anyone else, and he's not allowed to even have anyone else. And essentially she's gonna go to great lengths to make sure that if Ji Hyuk likes someone, they need to be eliminated. And I'm looking at you, Chaewon. So what she decides to do is, rather than getting her hands dirty, because like she's a chaebol, why would she? And she has money. She decides that she's going to manipulate two people who would already like for Chaewon to disappear, and that is our team evil, Soo Min and Min Hwan. So my main issue with Yura as a character is honestly, she's just unnecessary. Like for 11 episodes of the drama, we've had two convincing villains with storylines that made sense, characterization that makes sense, and they were just on literally just on the cusp of getting what they deserve. And right as they're about to do that, here comes Yura coming into the picture and kind of messing all of that up. It really just didn't make sense from a narrative perspective, and it also didn't help, no offense to the actress, I do like you, it didn't help that all of like the acting kind of came across as like a cartoony villain. Doing a little bit of investigating and reading a lot of comments, I saw multiple people saying that Yura wasn't even in one of the versions of the original source material, because I've heard that there's two. So it's a very interesting choice to kind of go with the version where she really isn't prominent for most of the story, and her like addition to it kind of feels a little unnecessary. And honestly, I felt like the show kind of felt a little bit flat when she was introduced, just because her relationships with a lot of the characters just felt like they kind of like happened overnight, and also at the same time they weren't essentially believable. Like, I in no way believed that Yura would actually like try and seduce Min Hwan, like, at all. It doesn't make sense. If they really wanted to kind of include Yura as part of the story, she should have really just been introduced from honestly like episode 1 or 2, and she could have just been in the background, or they could have just kept mentioning her multiple times as this person that Ji-Hyuk is arranged to be married with, or just have her work with like the main villains. There's so many things they could have done, but just throwing her at the end of the drama kind of just like ruined it a little bit for me. Like, honestly, the story could have just kept going, and I think the drama actually could have even ended a couple of episodes earlier if she wasn't a part of it. Ultimately, she inherits Ji-Hyuk's fate and dies in a car crash. Honestly, don't really have anything else to say. Now let's move on to some of my favorite characters in this drama. I really like Joo Ran as a character. The actress is in Hometown Cha Cha Cha, which I'm also watching right now, and I loved her there, and I also loved her here as well. So it was really nice kind of just like also getting to see her in this drama as well. So essentially, Joo Ran is shy, timid, not very vocal, like assistant manager or manager at UNK, and she's also on the same team as all of the characters that we've kind of already discussed. So at work, she's kind of living in her like own personal hell, because she has a misogynistic manager who kind of like has essentially like literally stomped out her voice, as well as stolen her ideas, to the point where she doesn't feel confident enough to kind of voice what she truly feels, but at the same time she's unable to kind of support the junior members of her team as well. As a character, she's very similar to Ji-Won. So as Ji-Won is starting to kind of figure out more about herself and become confident, she feels very like familiar with Joo Ran, and she honestly just tries her best to be a supportive figure in her life. And essentially, like, Ji-Won is using basically her second chance to also making sure that Joo Ran also gets a second chance to kind of live her current life to the fullest. When the misogynistic boss is put on leave, it is Seok, who is the director of strategic planning at UNK, who recommends Joo Ran to take over and essentially lead the team, which is the first time she's able to do this. So the show kind of hints that there's some sort of like relationship or some sort of history between them, seemingly very kind of like coworkery, because I don't even want to say that it's very like platonic, but essentially it seems like they kind of knew each other, specifically when she started working at the company. So this might be my favorite relationship in the drama, because most of their interactions kind of involve Seok kind of catching Joo Ran always at her lowest moments. So she starts going into, I think it's like a storage closet at the office as a way to kind of decompress and take a breath from how stressful work is. And of course, he happens to go into the same storage closet doing the same thing. And each time he finds her and they kind of talk about what's going on, as well as him continuously reminding her that he picked her to be the lead because he thought that she was capable. And the fact that he has confidence in her being able to do her job and that ultimately she deserves to be happy. This extends beyond work too. Seok-Jun isn't even aware of the reason why he keeps getting involved in her personal life. It just happens, or he just decides that he wants to be a good person and help out. So there happened to be a case where Joo Ran was working in the office on a Saturday, and then all of a sudden she gets a call from her daughter who's crying on the phone because she's hungry, and she's also been left alone because Joo Ran's husband just like left the apartment. And Joo Ran is very like frantic. She ends up getting a taxi, but then there's a whole load of traffic and she's just worried about being able to get her daughter. So then all of a sudden she sees Seok-Jun and she just like asks him for a favor, and he gives her a ride on his motorcycle and she's able to go take care of her daughter. Speaking of Joo Ran's husband, trash, just like throw him away. As Joo Ran is dealing with all the stress at work, her husband doesn't work and he does the bare minimum when it comes to taking care of their daughter. And on top of that, she's also dealing with some sort of health issue, which eventually is revealed to be stomach cancer, which, remember, is what Ji-Won had at the beginning of the drama before she died. And remember, the show has told us that multiple times that if Ji-Won isn't the one to live out her fate, ultimately it's going to be someone else. And if that isn't bad enough, while Joo Ran is finding out that she has stomach cancer, her husband is cheating on her and having an affair with an employee of her dad's restaurant. And of course, Seok-Jun is the one who's going to be the first person to witness this. When Ji-Won finds out about Joo Ran's stomach cancer, as well as the potential cheating of her husband, Ji-Won is like very concerned and doesn't want her to meet him alone, and just like offers to drive her to all of the appointments. And at the same time, they're working on compiling evidence to make sure that Joo Ran can get a divorce from him. So they work with the police, and there's one scene where we see the employee of the dad's restaurant who's having the affair with the husband enter the apartment. So they work with the police, they get to the apartment, but unfortunately nothing is happening. So the police, as well as the woman he's having an affair with, end up leaving the apartment. At the same time, Joo Ran's husband demands that Ji-Won leaves the apartment so that he can have a private conversation with his wife. Originally, Joo Ran goes along with it and asks Ji-Won to leave as well, but Ji-Won is just like super concerned because she's seen it all before in her own life, that she says that she's not going to leave, and instead she grabs like a baseball bat and she smashes the coffee table, which is made of glass. Just like, does everyone just like have glass coffee tables? Like, after watching this, like, I'm concerned, and I don't think I ever want to be near a glass table because of the fact that it's so easy to like, you're just gonna fall into one and ultimately just like die. So the police hear the commotion, and then Joo Ran's husband kind of like gets upset with her, almost like starts a fight, and then he pushes her and she falls back. So she falls back into what would have been the coffee table, but because Ji-Won has smashed the coffee table, she ends up living and ultimately not going through the same fate as Ji-Won. In the cutest moment ever, Seok-Jun offers to be Joo Ran's divorce lawyer, and he says that he's gonna be by her side through the divorce as well as through her cancer treatment. swoons. And with the support of everyone around her, Ji-Won is able to live in the present, support her team, find her voice, and most importantly, divorce her husband. Honestly, I don't really know what it is, but there's just something about these two characters and their relationship that really just like warmed my heart. Like, I think I honestly could have watched an entire drama just focused on their relationship. So I do wish that the drama had actually shown more of their kind of dynamic between each other, as well as like what happened in the past. And I was a little bummed out that when we got to the future, we didn't really get a glimpse of like where they are now. So in my alternate ending of the future, I would like to think that they are happily dating or happily married, and Seok is a wonderful stepfather to Choran's daughter. Moving on to our last set of characters, I had absolutely no idea that Yi-Kyung was going to be in this drama. Like, I used to listen to Beast, now called Highlight, and I think the last drama I saw him in was Circle in 2017, which is another great sci-fi drama. In Marry My Husband, he plays a chef named Uno who is uncomfortable doing live appearances, question mark. As soon as this was brought up in, I believe, the first episode, I assumed it would come back as a plot point just because it felt kind of just like random that it was being brought up, and eventually it did become a full circle moment all the way towards the last episode of the show. In high school, Uno had a crush on Chaewon, and it was actually requited. But, you know, as we've discussed, Chaewon can't be happy as long as Soo Min is in the picture. So Soo Min essentially writes a note forging Chaewon's handwriting and passes it to Uno, and it basically says, "Stay away from me, I'm not interested," basically like leave me alone, in order to kind of squash any prospects of potential romance. So it isn't until they become adults where they realize that Soo Min actually was in the picture and actually was the one who kind of sent this note, because Chaewon had no idea that a note even existed, and Uno, on the other hand, had been holding onto the note for 10 years, I guess, which to me was also like a little bit of a red flag that he never moved on from this like situation in over 10 years, and I don't think he even like dated anyone as a result. Uno's presence as a character in the show didn't really feel completely necessary. It felt like he was included as a way to kind of add some spice to Ji-Hyuk and Chaewon's potential relationship, considering that Ji-Hyuk was the one who kind of reintroduced them as adults, and Chaewon was originally interested in Uno when they were high school students. So it eventually leads us to like some pretty great moments of Ji-Hyuk just honestly just being jealous anytime he thinks that Chaewon likes Uno, or anytime Uno happens to like visit or kind of like take her out on a date. After Chaewon essentially rejects Uno's feelings and states that she's not interested and instead has feelings for someone else, he's kind of there as a loyal friend to her. So he's instrumental in helping kind of turn the tide when it comes to a lot of the bullies that she had in high school. So these bullies kind of become advocates for Chaewon, and they are instrumental in kind of also helping to kind of like embarrass and take down Soo Min without even being prompted, partially just because they felt bad that they were also manipulated by Chaewon, and they want to help to kind of like atone for that. So there is a situation towards the end of the drama where Yura purchases the restaurant that Uno works at and gives him two options. He can either help her take down Chaewon, or he's gonna lose his job. And obviously, Uno is a very much loyal friend, and he decides that he's just gonna lose his job because there's no way that he would be helping to take down Chaewon. And then obviously, as we talked about at the beginning of this, he ends up getting another offer where he becomes the face of the meal kit company that they're working on. And in the end, he also ends up getting a romance of his own. So we can start kind of like talking about her and their relationship as well. In Chi-Won's second chance at life, she happens to make a new friend at work who is Gyuri. Remember when we talked about the fact that Ji-Hyuk's dad had an affair? Well, Gyuri is the product of that and happens to be Ji-Hyuk's sister. This is Chaewon's, I think, first friend outside of Soo Min, someone who kind of like supports her, also someone who just genuinely wants to be around her. And Gyuri is actually like a really great friend. She's always there for Chaewon when she needs someone to talk to. She helped her get that transformative makeover. And then in the case where Soo Min gave her those knockoff earrings, Gyuri, who has money, just lent her the authentic ones and allowed her to just kind of like borrow them and wear them to the anniversary dinner. In terms of criticisms for Yuri as a character, I would say that she felt kind of very one note. Like, in terms of things we know about her, we know that she is Ji-Hyuk's sister. We also know that she's like overly excited all the time, has a positive mindset, and she loves food. It really just felt like her character was only there to kind of progress Ji-Won's story, or sometimes to just serve as like a narrator or someone who's just like in the background for reactions. I really do wish her character would have been able to shine a little bit more in terms of the relationship with like her brother. She didn't really have any conflict with the grandfather, which I thought was a little bit surprising considering that their father had an affair and she was the product of an affair. And then similarly with her relationship with Uno, I feel like we should have been shown more of those interactions. There really isn't that much to say about Uno and Gyuri's relationship in the drama. Like, I knew they would end up together because he's a chef and she loves to eat, but other than that, there really isn't that much to talk about. They had very few scenes together in the drama, and it honestly felt like I kind of blinked and then they were confessing their feelings and ultimately dating each other. Like, are they cute? Yes. But I wish the show would have focused on their kind of relationship and friendship rather than having Uno kind of pining after Chi-Won when it was very clear to us from the beginning that he really never stood a chance. That time honestly could have been better used to develop both of their characters aside from just their relationship. So I'm really wondering if it's like that in the original source material as well. So if you've read either of them, please let me know down in the comments below. And similarly, we didn't really get to see where they are when we get to the future. So in my version of the future, they are still happily dating or they are happily married. Back to Chi-Won and Ji-Hyuk, they end up getting married, which the double proposal was super cute. They have 3 kids and they end up starting a foundation called, wait for it, Second Chances. The show ends where we started in 2023 with Chaewon and Ji-Hyuk at an art gallery adorned with cherry blossoms. Ji-Hyuk expresses his gratitude towards Chaewon for surviving her death date. Anytime I hear or say the word death date, I don't know why, but it just really reminds me of Manifest, considering like almost every single episode they kept using that one phrase. Anyways, Chaewon says that she's thankful that he has given her something to look forward to in life. And then for the first time in her life, the last words she says as the drama ends is, "I'm happy." I really enjoyed this drama from start to finish. There's something so satisfying about seeing Chaewon overcome her fate, discovering her voice, and overall just like finding happiness. Was this the best drama I've ever seen? No. But It was entertaining from start to finish, and it really delivered on kind of like the messiness of its characters in terms of what I was looking for. And there were so many villains that I was able to root against, which is kind of like what I want when I watch a drama. I watched the finale with a friend of mine, and we both walked away feeling extremely satisfied with the way this drama ended, and overall just being happy. Even just like talking about it now, like I feel a sense of sadness that the drama is over, but at the same time, more than anything, I'm really happy that I was able to kind of like experience and go on this journey with Ji-Won. And it's time to hand out some awards. So for every drama we watch on this channel, we'll be handing out some mini words. And Justin, Marry My Husband, was nominated for 3 awards. First category up is Best Performance. Our nominees are Park Min-Hwan as Ji-Won, Ha-Yoon as Soo Min, Na-Eun as Ji-Hyuk, Yi-Kyung as Min Hwan. And the winner for Best Performance goes to Ha-Yoon. And the next category is Most Overused Product Placement. Our nominees are Kopiko and Authentique. And the award for most overused product placement is Kopiko. I saw a comment on, I think it was Reddit, and someone was comparing Kopiko and saying that it is this generation's version of, if you guys remember, the Subway product placements, where in every single drama, for whatever reason, they would always like end up in Subway, even if it just like didn't make sense. It was just like the staple, the classic like product placement. And our last category of the evening is Best Trope Usage. And our nominees are Ji-Hyuk and the Truck of Doom, Ji-Hyuk and Chaewon already knowing each other, Chaewon getting a classic makeover, and Ji-Hyuk catching Jaewon as she falls multiple times. And the winner for Best Trope Usage goes to Ji-Hyuk and the Truck of Doom. Stay safe in these streets, man. Once again, congrats to all of the lovely winners tonight. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of Marry My Husband. What did you like, dislike, and most importantly, what did you think was the most overused product placement in the drama? And also let me know what other dramas you think I should pick up. I'm currently watching Flex X Cop as well as Hometown Cha Cha Cha, and I saw that there's a whole bunch of other great dramas airing right now. Lastly, I rewatched the first episode of Boys Over Flowers for the first time in 14 years, and oof. It was truly an experience that I just will not go into full detail about it right now. But on that note, have a lovely day, and I will see you in the next one.